Today we travel to the Appalachian frontier to tell the story of an explorer, surveyor, adventurer, and military man who attempted one of the first settlements in the Appalachian frontier. Hello, folks. I'm Steve Gilley along with Rod Mullins, and this is Stories, a History of Appalachia.
Well, Steve, once again, we get ready to talk about one of those, founding explorers, at least of Appalachia. But, I knew about this guy a long time ago, and I made the connection, and I was always wondering why more wasn't played up about this man because, he's popular in one portion of Virginia, but he's not as well known maybe on the other end of Virginia that I'll just go ahead and say Lee County end, at least toward Cumberland Gap. But this guy really was an explorer.
He was indeed. There's a lot about him that's even more adventurous than Daniel Boone, but he's not known. He doesn't have the reputation that Daniel Boone had, but a pure adventure and a big story as well that we're going to tell you today. Now, Joseph Martin was born in 1740 at a plantation in Caroline County, Virginia, north of Richmond, to Captain Joseph Martin Sr. and his wife Susanna. Martin Sr., in turn, was the son of a wealthy British glass manufacturer and shipbuilder named William Martin, who sent him to the Virginia colony from Bristol, England, aboard a ship he owned, the Bryce.
In 1745, John Martin Sr. moved the family to a new plantation in Albemarle County, where Charlottesville is located. At his death in 1762, Sr. left Jr. 300 acres of land on which he could lead a comfortable planter's life. That was something that John Martin Jr. wasn't quite cut out for.
Yeah, John Jr., see, was an athletic man, bold, daring, and looking for adventure. He liked to gamble, much like his father, using the older man's secret of pretending to be drunk in order for his fellow gamblers to let down their guard. As you can imagine, Rod, he became quite good at playing cards. But that adventurous streak led to a stint in the Army during the French and Indian War, joining at Fort Pitt, now Pittsburgh. Following his time in the Army, where he earned the rank of general, Martin headed to the frontier as a real estate speculator, a trapper and fur trader, and Indian fighter. During this time, he bought a tract of land in Henry County, where he later established his home and where Martinsville, named for him, is located.
Yeah, that's the point that I recognize there. And just recently, if I'm not mistaken, Martinsville celebrated about Joseph Martin here
Mhm.
in a little deal that they had there in the city. Well, he also became a surveyor and he traveled the West, laying out tracts of land for the moneyed interests back east. On one occasion, Joseph Martin gained possession of 20,000 acres of land in Powell Valley from none other than Patrick Henry in a surveying contest. Now, all of this work out west gained General Martin a reputation as one of the best explorers in the Western mountains.
And as he was growing up back in Albemarle County, among his neighbors were Dr. Thomas Walker, Peter Jefferson, James Madison, and members of the Lewis and Clark families. Quite a neighborhood indeed. Martin was among the group that traveled with Dr. Walker through the Cumberland Gap. Now, one story goes that the men discovered a spring coming out of the mountain beneath a cave they named the Gap Cave. The men took out some rum that they had, drank a toast to the health of the Duke of Cumberland, and it was from that toast that the name Cumberland Gap came. Now, in 1769, Martin returned to Powell Valley to set up a settlement in the wilderness, about 100 miles west of the furthest settlement at the time. Martin and his group, which included his brother Bryce, at the direction of the Loyal Land Company, set up their settlement on 21,000 acres of land that had been granted to him and to Dr. Thomas Walker. There they built Martin Station, near present-day Rose Hill, which became a well-known stop on the Wilderness Road, a replica of which is now located at the Wilderness Road State Park in Lee County. Now, while the settlement itself failed, it did establish Joseph Martin as the first man to attempt a settlement so far west. Now, Daniel Boone himself was astounded that Martin had gotten farther west than he had when he chanced upon Martin Station in 1762. Or, Rod, it might be better to say that he came upon one of Martin's stations. You see, the Cherokee and Shawnee didn't want Martin's settlement on their land, so they attacked it, driving him off.
Yeah, I remember that now. We've talked a little bit about that briefly in some podcasts in the past and talking about, the raids and certain things like that. But yeah, they didn't want him to have any kind of settlement whatsoever there. But, I got to say this. In 1775, he returned to the area and built Martin Station number 2, which again was attacked by the Indians, and it forced him and his men to leave. Then in 1783, he returned and built Martin Station a third time. It was this third fort that provided protection to settlers and supplies to hunters heading into Kentucky with Boone on the Wilderness Road.
Oh, that fourth Martin station?
Yeah.
Well, that was the one built by the state of Virginia at the Wilderness Road State Park using tools and methods that would have been used back in the 18th century.
Hmm.
Now, during his time in Powell Valley, General Martin also served as the agent there of Richard Henderson, a North Carolina merchant who had negotiated the purchase of a vast tract of land beyond the Cumberland Gap from the Cherokee and who had a dream to set up a colony he called Transylvania. He also had been commissioned by Governor Patrick Henry in 1777 as superintendent for Indian Affairs for Virginia and later served in the same capacity for North Carolina. From that North Carolina job from 1783 to 1789. It was his diplomacy with the Indian tribes that led to them setting out the conflict between the colonies at Britain at the Battle of Kings Mountain, a resounding victory for the Americans that led eventually to victory in the Revolutionary War.
Martin married and fathered 18 children with his first wife, Sarah Lucas, and after her death, with his second wife, Susanna Graves. Oh, in addition to those 18, Martin had 2 children with his Cherokee wife also. Now, you see, Martin was also married to Elizabeth Ward, the daughter of Nancy Ward and her husband, Brian Ward, which explains his success in getting the Cherokees to avoid involvement, so to speak, in the conflict with Great Britain. It also allowed him the opportunity to negotiate with the tribe on behalf of the Virginia governor, Thomas Jefferson.
Now, during the immediate post Revolutionary War period, the state of Franklin was established on the Appalachian frontier, where East Tennessee is located today. Martin had a mixed relationship with the new state in dealing with the Cherokee. You see, he was seen by many in the region as being too soft on the Indians. In one instance, over warriors killing 2 settlers near Clinch Mountain. Now, those killings sparked calls for revenge by those who'd moved into the area, with Martin attempting to mediate the conflict between the white settlers and the Native Americans. In the end, the authorities ignored Martin and sent men into a Cherokee town where they killed one woman and shot several others in retribution. Now, this soured him on the state of Franklin, and his good friend and mentor, Patrick Henry, agreed, sending him a letter in which he wrote,
The disorderly behavior of the Franklin people, as they call themselves, gives me concern. If they will not be subservient to the rules and regulations respecting Indian affairs which prevail in all the states, they must expect none of the advantages of the Union.
Martin negotiated the Treaty of Hopewell along with Indian agents Andrew Pickens and Benjamin Hawkins in 1785. Actually, 3 treaties, to be honest with the Cherokee, the Choctaw, and the Chickasaw. That earned him distrust from the Cherokee, who felt that the agreement was actually a land grab. Martin fared no better with the white settlers in the area, who felt that the treaty was an attempt to take power away from local governments. As a result of the controversy over his part in the Hopewell negotiations, his appointment as Indian agent wasn't renewed.
Well, faced with all of this, General Martin sold his lands in Powell Valley along with the station in 1789, and he moved back to Martinsville. Martin was also a politician, serving in the North Carolina General Assembly several times and then in the Virginia House of Delegates. He also served briefly in the Georgia legislature in 1783 and a member of the Watauga Association, which supported the founding of the state of Franklin, which he resigned from when he realized it might create problems with his role as an Indian agent.
He retired to his plantation in Henry County, Belmont, located on Leatherwood Creek, where he died on December 18th, 1808. He's buried in the family cemetery there. Now, how about that, Rod? That is a story and a half.
Yeah, it is. And, and I realized at one time, I lived in Henry County for a period of time, about 6 months. I was teaching up there. And one of the things that everybody talked about was Martinsville was the home of Joseph Martin.
Mhm.
And then I started putting one and one together and I said, wait a minute, there's a Martin station in Lee County. And then when we started getting started on our podcast here of stories, a history of Appalachia, I started making the connection. And then you made the connection with me of, yeah, this is the same guy that, of course, lived in Martinsville, but he also explored west. And he's the one that created Martin Station. And you kind of told me the story, I think, when we were making our trip down to Cumberland Gap here several years ago. So it was all very interesting. I was just so glad to hear this story because, it depicted him in such a way that, yeah, he was one of these major explorers. But in some ways, I don't know if Lee County or at least around Cumberland Gap and some of those places really realize what kind of impact and I guess contribution per se that he had in establishing, what was left, or at least what we know of as Cumberland Gap and being a gateway to the West.
Well, he was sort of the trailblazer for Daniel Boone, to be honest with you, coming before him and setting up the station up there. It's um, it's an odd story in that this guy obviously was of the planter class, the wealthy class, and then was a wealthy man himself who made himself into a frontiersman rather than the other way around. It's just kind of an odd thing. Henry County, by the way, if you don't know, is named for Patrick Henry, who actually moved down there toward the end of his life and was a neighbor of Joseph Martin.
Yeah, and we got to remember too, Patrick County, right beside of Henry County, is named for Patrick Henry, but his first
Hmm.
name.
Yeah, that's true. Well, folks, that's the story of General Joseph Martin, one of the early explorers in Appalachia. Thanks for listening. Now, be sure to click that subscribe button and ding the bell so you'll know when we release a new episode for you. And please give us a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to the audio version of the Stories podcast on your favorite podcast app. Till next we meet. So long, everybody.
So long.